Now welcome to another Let's Talk Some Star Wars, where this time we'll be taking a look at and discussing the results of the poll that asked, what did you think of the third episode of Skeleton Crew? I'll also then be reading and responding to some of the comments left on this poll, and so let's get right to it, where we'll see that 25% of people said it was a good episode and or I enjoyed it, 10% said it was okay and or I enjoyed it for the most part, 1% said it was bad and didn't enjoy it, and then 64% said, I'm not watching the show. And then when we take out the 64% not watching, not to discredit them, but when we take them out and just look at the people watching and how they rated it, well, 70% said it was good and they enjoyed it, 28% said it was okay and I enjoyed it for the most part, and then there was about 2% who said it was bad or didn't enjoy it, which are, from those watching it, pretty dang good numbers. This is, so far, a pretty well-received show from the people watching it. Again, we can't ignore the 64% not watching it, and it is kind of a shame, and we'll talk more about it in just a minute, but it is kind of a shame that a lot of people are skipping on it for whatever reason. There are many reasons they are, no doubt. But in my opinion, and it's just my opinion, but I thought it's been actually really good. Not the best thing I have ever seen, not the best Star Wars show ever, but a solid, enjoyable show. A solid, enjoyable watch so far. Alright, and now we're going to move right to the comments, but not before, of course, once again just saying thank you to everyone who votes, comments, and watches these, or any of my videos across both the channels. Also a huge thank you to those who support my channels on Patreon, and make my Discord server the best place on the internet to talk some Star Wars. And now we begin with, as always, the top-rated comment from the poll, which this time came to us from Lilac and Gooseberries, who said, I'm going to assume the 65% is because of Disney, not the lack of love for Star Wars. And considering again this was the top rated comment, I would say that, yeah, that's probably exactly what it is. I'm sure another time, another place, another, as I've suggested before, parallel universe where Star Wars is being handled extremely well, that the number of people not watching it who are Star Wars fans, of course, because I'm sure there are a lot of average casual fans or general audience out there not watching, sure. But I think the number of Star Wars fans, and as I always say, if you are getting this poll in your feed, you've probably watched my videos, you probably watch other Star Wars videos, you are probably a Star Wars fan. And I think that number in another reality or under different circumstances would be much lower. I think people would be happy to give even something that, yes, is more kid-friendly or kid-oriented a chance, even though they're adults themselves. I think this is, to a degree, getting, as many have suggested, it is getting soloed. In other words, the last piece of Star Wars content to come out was so sort of divisive or bad, in the opinion of many, that they are not going to watch the next thing just out of principle or to kind of teach Disney a lesson that, hey, you can't just put out garbage and expect us to keep watching it, even though this show isn't garbage. But anyway, we're going to move on to a related question, and this one comes to us from Is This a JoJo reference, who said, even if it's good, why would I want to support Disney Star Wars? And I certainly understand this position. I don't fault or have an issue with anybody who is essentially boycotting Disney Star Wars or is 100% done with it for whatever reason. Maybe you just don't like Disney, you don't like them at all, and will never give them another dime of your money no matter what, which that's your prerogative. Though I would say the problem with boycotting Star Wars, if you do have any hope for it whatsoever, if you do want to one day see it get better and will potentially give your money to Disney, assuming they are giving you a good product, not supporting something that is, for the most part, or seems to be agreed upon by those who are watching it, but not supporting something as good is kind of sending them a mixed message. It's hard for them to know what fans actually want if they don't actually watch the stuff that they think is good, if that makes sense. And yes, good is subjective. There are probably a lot of people in that 65% or 64%, whatever it ended up being, who would watch this and not like it or not find it their cup of tea or not their type of Star Wars. But again, I think it's pretty good. I think it's something that is good for Star Wars in general, that it does appeal to younger audiences. Like I said, I am someone who hopes Disney can one day get their act together, that Star Wars can recover, that it can be what it once was or close to it. It's never going to be what it once was. But I want to see future generations be able to enjoy Star Wars, so I'm happy that this show essentially does that it is an introduction to Star Wars for younger generations or kids these days, and it can be watched by someone like me who is much older than a kid. It's, again, not the greatest thing I've ever seen, but I really enjoy it nonetheless. I'm really enjoying the intrigue and the mystery. The kids are good. Jude Law has been good. Everything about it has just been good, and it's been fun to watch. And you want to let Disney know that, hey, this is pretty good. Alright, and next up we have this comment from Rick Berman, who said, Goonies in space. Got it. Many hours saved. There's also this one from Bart Watts, who said, this is admittedly different, but so far it's entertaining. It's lighthearted, it doesn't insult its audience, it hasn't broken lore yet, and it's just fun and fresh. I'd encourage people and their kids to give it a shot. Now, I'm saying this after 3 episodes. If Uncle Palpy shows up in this, I will probably laugh, but so far I'm into it. And no, this isn't just Goonies in space. Now, does it have a similar premise? Sure, but as the second comment pointed out here, there's a lot more to it than that. It's not just a knockoff of Goonies. It, yes, tries to bring back that sort of 80s nostalgia, but it's still more than that, I would say. The intrigue is, again, really good. The characters have been good. Everything about it has been good. It looks really good, too, which has been a surprise, to be sure, but a welcome one. A lot of the Disney Plus shows, or Star Wars shows, in my opinion, have looked kind of cheap-ish. Not saying this is movie quality and you're going to be blown away by it, but it looks really good. It uses a lot of practical effects, a lot of puppets. It just feels like Star Wars in a lot of ways. And again, it's fun, there's intrigue, there's good characters, there's everything you want out of a show that you're just going to sit down and enjoy for 30, 35, 40 minutes or whatever an episode is. It's not profound, it's not Andor, but it is certainly good for what it is, and it is more than Goonies in space. Alright, and moving on to the next comment now, we have one from Lone Battle Droid who said, even though I've heard good things about it, I just don't want to make the time for it. I'm busy with work and there's other media I'd rather consume. And this comment here brings up a really interesting point, which is that, yeah, there is a near infinite amount of entertainment out there to be watched or played or read or whatever it might be. And is there something about Skeleton Crew that rises to the top, that makes you really want to watch this instead of watch that, beyond it just being Star Wars, which, as we covered before, with that first comment essentially, is not reason alone to watch something anymore. There are a lot of people that just don't care about keeping tabs on Star Wars, and so the show really does need to kind of stand on its own. And though I think it's a great show, I think it's a fun show, I'm not so sure it's the best show out there, right? There are a lot of really good shows, either right now or from the past, that you can watch, or that will be coming up in the weeks to come as this show carries on. And that's really the problem with Star Wars. I get asked a lot, or got asked just the other day in a comment or question, how much of Disney Star Wars is actually just good in and of itself. And honestly, not much. A lot of it seems to rely on Star Wars, or tries to be good because it's Star Wars. Ironically, the few things that stand on their own are the things that are less Star Wars, like here's Skeleton Crew. I'm not trying to say I don't think it's worth watching. I'm not trying to contradict myself from what I've said before, but I'm not sure it is the best show out there. I'm not saying I would suggest, hey, you gotta watch Skeleton Crew before you watch something like The Penguin, for example. I thought that was a phenomenal show. I'm saying it's fun for what it is, and if you have time for it, I would certainly watch it. Alright, let's do one more comment here, and it comes to us from Lord Emperor Vader, who said, this show is amazing because it treats the audience with respect and is able to answer the questions that they have about the obvious, and spends its time building up an actual good mystery instead of treating the obvious as a mystery. And I agree. I find it refreshing that one of the questions after the second episode was, well, why didn't he just break out of the prison cell or jail cell before? If he can use the Force or whatever to float the key to himself, why didn't he just get away before? And that was a question myself and many others had, and the show decided to answer it through the kids who asked the same kind of obvious question, like, why did you wait for us to get the key and escape? And the answer was he needed a ship. I also appreciate that we are already starting to get answers about AT-AT, and that they didn't just present this big mystery about this planet and then, well, you gotta watch to the very end before we give you anything, because we know we don't have anything to really keep you around for other than the mystery. I do like that it is respecting its audience in many different ways. That has been one of the refreshing parts about the show, that it isn't trying to use cheap tricks and gimmicks necessarily to keep you watching because you just need to know the answer. It is really good in and of itself. Again, not the greatest thing ever, not something that's going to compete with the best shows out there if you're someone on the fence about watching it, But I still think it is definitely worth the time. I think it is a good show, and I think it is a good, fun Star Wars show. And hopefully it'll do better than expected in terms of viewership, and Disney and Lucasfilm will look at it and say, oh, so this is better than some of the other things we've been doing with Star Wars. Well, I think that's going to be all I got for you this time. Now it is your turn. Take to the comments below and tell me what you think of the third episode of Skeleton Crew, or what you think of it overall, or tell me what you think of what I or anyone else had to say about it here in this video. Whatever the case may be, though, leave a comment below. Let's talk some Star Wars, and until next time, thanks for watching.